And we're live. It's been the first time we've been live since, I would say, probably the draft party, right, Adnan?
Yeah, I think the draft. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, in case you haven't figured it out, the Jets have made some news today. Go ahead, Adnan. You want to lead it up, or actually, I can do it. We hired Aaron Glenn. What a surprise, right?
Yeah,
Aaron Glenn is back in the green and white, right?
It's a good day, I think.
It's a good day. I mean, it's basic. He was probably one of the top, I would say, 4 candidates that were available to be scooped up by any team, right? I think that's safe to say if you do like that with like Rabel, Flores, Ben Johnson. Yeah, right. Those are pretty much the big 4 that are available. And you could also argue Joe Brady's in the mix. And I think Ben Johnson was probably the one for everybody, right? And then Vrabel would have been 2, although I was kind of just destined to go to New England no matter what. And then Aaron Glenn was probably the 3rd best coaching candidate that was available for anybody, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, and realistically, I think it's going to do wonders for our defense. I really do. And it's interesting because he left the building to go back to Detroit. And what he was probably doing is probably the same thing that Ben Johnson was doing, right? Trying to figure out who he's going to take from Detroit and bring back with him to New York, right? Because Ben Johnson's going to do the same fucking thing too.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I also think, go home, talk to the wife, have those conversations before moving forward, exchange numbers, things of that nature. So I think there was a lot that went into it. And I think him leaving yesterday wasn't this big deal that a piece of Jets Twitter made it out to be, and you saw on social media. I think that him going home was totally fine. They got a deal hammered out, and some of the names that he's thinking of bringing on board are very intriguing. So I think this was a good move. I think that, when you have a guy like Parcells who is advocating for somebody, when you have a lot of reports you've seen former players were going to Woody, advocating for Aaron Glenn. I think it's a very good thing that there's buy-in from former Jets, current Jet players. We've already seen reactions from Jermaine, Sauce, Braylon Allen, a bunch of guys are ready to rock with this. So I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for the defense. It's going to get back to what it should have been, probably, if we're honest. It's going to be more man versus the zone shit that like Saleh and Ulbrich were really big fans of, right? You're going to see Sauce travel finally. I think that's the big thing that you're going to see. It's very different, but also this too. I think, and I've been reading about the Lion defense and kind of how it functions right now, right? It does rely on safeties doing their fucking job, right? And a lot of accountability on the safeties. And like Lion safeties were above and beyond this year, right? Well, what's his face led the league in interceptions, right? Kirby, whatever his name is, right?
Joseph, yep.
Yeah. So like it's going to be interesting because they have Tony Adams and they have Ashton. Chuck Clark's probably gone realistically just because he can't stay fucking healthy, right? And also, like, it kind of does make me think that, like, hey, if the Jets don't get, like, the Mason Graham or, like, Will Johnson as the corner on the other side, there's that Georgia kid at safety that
Malachi Starks.
Yeah. He's supposed to be generational, too, kind of like the way Kyle Hamilton was, right? And, like, I remember during that draft, we were all bitching, like, there's no way the Jets could take Kyle Hamilton, right? And obviously, we had a home run draft that year, right? That was what, 2020? It was 2022, right? When Kyle Hamilton came out?
I believe it was, 2022 or 2021. Yeah, one of those years.
Yeah, and Kyle Hamilton's been pretty much nothing but perfect at that point, right? Up to this point, right?
He's been excellent. You can't fold it. But, I mean, also just keep in mind, right, drafting a safety at 7 – that's very high.
It is high, but you trade back.
But if you look at Kyle Hamilton, he fell. And if he's the same kind of guy, I just don't know if you draft a safety that high. But I think the other piece that I wanted to touch on with the Glenn defense is it's still a 4-3. Right? Which means you have the personnel. You're not going to be asking Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson to be playing 3-4 outside linebackers. You're not going to ask, a smaller guy in Will McDonald to have to set the edge 50 times a game. So I think this was a really good move and that you weren't switching over to a 3-4. So I think that really helps as well. And yeah, with Sauce traveling, he's excellent in man coverage when he's had to do it. And I think that might even be more of a benefit to him if he's just told, hey, go shut this guy down, instead of having to worry about his zone and worry about his side of the field. So I think that will really help him get back to what we saw in the first 2 years. So from the defensive perspective, this is very good. Bringing in Steve Wilkes, if that is the guy, he's a very aggressive defensive coordinator, which is what I absolutely want. So, I think the defensive side of things are looking very good.
Okay. I'm just going to read some PFF grades on the Lions defense as a whole. Even though we know that when they got beat up, everything kind of did go downhill a little bit in terms of their overall averages, but these are their averages for the year based on the defense, right? They finished PFF's number 5 defense overall, okay, which is great, right? The run defense, 10th, right? Tackling, 3rd.
Yeah.
Pass rush, 11th. Coverage, 6th. And this is with a lot of injuries to that defense, right? It was a very good defense this year, right? It was a very good defense, and it had a lot of holes to it. And it sucks because, the injuries really started kind of started when Aiden Hutchinson went down.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it was all season, it wasn't just, so it was all season.
Really when it started to just okay, things are not as prominent. And I think he got hurt probably, it was the Minnesota game, right?
Yeah, it was pretty early. It wasn't
it was the Minnesota game, I think.
Yeah,
right?
because it was early enough to where they were saying he could be back for the Super Bowl. That's how kind of early it was, right? So, I mean, when you lose a guy of that, caliber that early in the season, and to still have, per PFF, which of course is one data point, but, to have a highly ranked defense per them, I think, speaks to just people wanting to play for Aaron Glenn, and Aaron Glenn having the ability to really, get the most out of guys that aren't stars.
Yep. Okay, so, and also just some other shit to kind of tell you guys, right? So in the 18 games they played this year, which would include a playoff game, they only gave up over 34 times, okay? Over 20 points, right? And they had a lot of 20-point games, to be fair, including a loss to the Bucs, which that was just a really bad Jared Goff game. They should have won that game, right? They've had 7 games of their 18 were over 20 points giving up. And most of those games are after the injury started, right? If that makes sense, right? So, and nothing over 30 before the Aiden Hutchinson injury.
Yeah, there it is. So
it's interesting, which is interesting. I don't know. We're very happy with it just because, if it wasn't going to be Aaron Glenn, there was going to be a lot of uncertainty with who the guy would have been. It definitely would have been more of a second-tier hire versus what seems more like a first-tier hire.
Unless they ended up with Flores. Obviously not a conversation anymore, but I think if it wasn't Glenn, they would have pivoted to Flores.
But that would have been the other guy.
That would have been and outside of Flores, like you said, if it wasn't him, then I think you'd be looking at, guys that would be very uninspiring. So I think this is a good move. And just to kind of move forward just a little bit, I think it's interesting that they're still interviewing GM candidates.
Yes,
I thought I read yesterday, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were talking about it, that they were letting GMs and head coaches know they were going in a different direction. So I thought this was a package deal, but interesting that they're opening up second round interviews for GMs, and Glenn will probably have a say in it, which I think is a good move because they have to be able to work together in terms of obviously bringing in players, overall kind of identity and strategy for this team. So I think that's kind of a good move, letting Glenn have some input now in who he's going to be working with as a GM.
Correct. And I think right now when it comes to GMs, there's 2 names that are of the most interest, including one that did get a second interview. It was actually a name, and I reviewed the last video we did when Lance Newmark's name popped up. I was the one that said that was very interesting without knowing too much about him outside that he had just joined up with Washington, right? But Lance Newmark is a very interesting name. And also Chris Spielman, who's also the special assistant to the CEO and everything that's in Detroit, basically. those are the two names that are the most interesting there because essentially they have the only real connection to Aaron Glenn at this point. But this is the one thing I thought that was very interesting about Newmark, right? He was one of the guys that, and Detroit was doing this too, but they introduced the VR technology to helping train quarterbacks be prepared for situations that are going on. And what they would do with Jaden Daniels, actually, which is very interesting, is that they would speed up everything in the VR for Jaden Daniels so by the time he got on a football field, everything was already slowed down for him.
Yeah, I think that's
It also allows you to go through more simulations too if you speed things up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think Newmark he's definitely, interesting, like you said. And I think there are others, right? Hallaby from Philadelphia, the Packers executive. So there are some guys that I think they're going to go back to. Maybe they go back to Dimitrov again, and bring him in for a second interview. So I think it's definitely going to be interesting. I think the next big thing we're looking at is who's going to be the offensive coordinator, right?
Correct.
And you're seeing some
GM and offensive coordinator and DC. Those are the big three that are remaining.
I think, and I think defensive coordinator is a little bit mitigated by the fact that Glenn is a defensive guy. From everything that I've read, is he's looking for people who have head coaching experience on the defensive side, and on the offensive side, he just wants experienced people. So I've heard names like Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator turned head coach in Chicago this year, to be part of the staff. I've seen the
Dennis Allen is also a name that's popping up too for defensive coordinator.
Dennis Allen, right? He's in play in Chicago also. So there are some experienced names which would be nice to have. And then I was looking at, we've all seen this, the offensive coordinator candidate from the Rams. He's their passing game coordinator. He looks really interesting, So there are some names out there to get excited about. Mark Brunell is one as well. So I think these are kind of over the next couple of days who we're going to be looking at and what we're going to be seeing. So
yeah, I think Brunell. I think you're right on Brunell, though. I think that's the most interesting OC name because that's like the next logical step for where he is right now, which is
right.
Passing game QB coach, right?
Exactly. And
Dennis Allen actually makes the most sense for DC right now because there has been hints that Glenn does want someone with a little head coaching experience on that one. So that would make sense. And Dennis Allen probably would have been fine had like Derek Carr worked out.
Listen, I mean, I think we've said this a million times, right? Is there are some people that are just suited to be coordinators. And I think Dennis Allen, Steve Wilkes, guys like that have head coaching experience, but they're definitely more suited to be coordinators. So if you can get either of those guys in, I think it's a good thing. Another thing that will be kind of, I guess, a little bit refreshing for Jet fans is there will be a new special teams coordinator. Brant Boyer somehow survived a couple of coaching regimes. So I think that will be an interesting move as well. I'm just excited for the energy that Glenn is going to bring, the idea that he has experience turning absolutely nothing into something great, and just the fact that former players are excited, current players are excited, and kind of it's, even I know he's one of John's enemies of the show, but even a guy like Colin Cowherd, who barely has anything positive to say about the Jets, like the move. So I think that there is optimism.
He likes the move. He likes the move. Oh, shit, it's not going to work out then.
Optimism is high. So I think that's a good thing. You always want to feel good about the hire. And I think the Jets finally got some good news for the first time in a while here.
Yeah, it would be the first good news since, I guess, I'm trying to think what would have been the first good news that we got this year. The last good news would have been Davante Adams, but that didn't quite work out.
Probably Davante Adams. Yeah, I think so.
Probably Davante Adams, right? I mean, although maybe you could argue Reddick finally came in and it didn't require a large deal.
Yeah.
But also that didn't work out too. Although I would say Davante definitely worked out more than him because just because of the
I mean, extrapolated out for a full 17-game season, Devontae Adams is a borderline all-pro if, he kept that up. So, the Adams move was good. But, yeah, I think this is something to be excited about. And now we get to watch Glenn build his staff, and I'm looking forward to all that.
I am too. Anything else as relates to and just so you know, guys, Monty couldn't make it because he is flying to St. Louis for work, which is hell, basically, because I don't know if anyone's ever been to St. Louis. Yeah, I said it. Although if you're a fan of us in St. Louis, like, comment, subscribe, just like the rest of you. Like, comment, subscribe, buy our swag. It will help us do better. Adnan, do you have your Laugh Through the Turbulence swag?
I'm ordering it today.
I felt like I've heard that from you and Monty every fucking time I ask. It's like a running joke at this point that you guys don't even have the swag at this point.
I'm going to order it today.
Okay. You can find where to buy our swag in the bio of our YouTube channel. So buy the fucking swag, people. God, it's not that hard. Like, give me some money. All right. I want money. You want your money. And also, like, when I got the swag and I wore it to the first Jets game, it was the Houston game, and we won that game. So, and then I stopped wearing the swag to the games, and then as a result, we didn't do so hot.
Yeah, so that's the key. Buy swag, and we'll win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I wore it to the Dolphin stuff, and yeah, that happened. Worked out pretty well. All right, I think that's about it, right?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Just wanted to come on, give our initial impressions. We'll have definitely more content coming as the staff is built out, the GM is hired, and all that. So, good day for the Jets, and let's move forward and look forward to some good things.
Yep. And the last thing I will say is that we have a deep dive episode that is coming up. It's going to be very, very detailed. It's basically how we got here, and it's going to go through the 3 stages of grief, essentially, that we are as Jets fans, from our glory days to the Rex years, all the way to where the fuck we are right now. Look forward to that. All right. Thanks,
everyone. Appreciate it.